So welcome everybody to Beyond the Breed. This is our detox session with Lillian, who lives in Florida. Yay! So we're going to talk tonight about detoxing, both for us, our dogs, and our homes. So Lillian, for the benefit of those who are anxious to know more, what exactly are toxins?
So while I was doing my research, what I found that toxins are actually naturally produced by our bodies and our plants. And what we normally think of toxins are all those environmental chemicals and pollutants that are around our environment. And the technical word for those is toxicants, which I did not know that. So you learn something every day.
Every day's a school day.
That's right. That's right. So, one important concept that I want people to grasp on is something called toxic load. So, there's always toxins on our environment. The toxic load is when the amount is so much uh, higher and it overwhelms the normal detoxifying pathways on our body, and it starts accumulating to the point that then it starts creating damage to our organs and organ systems.
Cool. So where do we find toxins?
Okay,
apart from in the air and
everywhere. Sadly, everywhere. So unless you live like, I don't know, like in a cabin in the forest, far away from civilization, we literally cannot escape it. Our environments have become so polluted. The last 50, 60 years, if you Google the amount of chemicals that have been introduced to the environment, it's just a mind-boggling number. And our bodies, there's not been enough time, let's say, for our bodies to adapt to that load. So they now call them forever chemicals. I was reading, there's a study that they did on 30,000 samples of umbilical cords of babies, and they found these forever chemicals in every single sample. Can you imagine? It was not, 10%
wow.
or 20%. So it's so pervasive. These are babies that haven't even come out and taken their first breath. They already have them. So I basically classify them in the toxins inside our body that are the real toxins. And those are the ones that we make just in going through life, because when we intake food and that food is metabolized for energy, we create some toxins. And the easiest way to, maybe it's a silly analogy, but just like you have your car and you have to put gas or petrol to have it run, to function, but the exhaust is very toxic, right? So inside our cells, something similar happens where we need to eat food, and in the process of metabolizing the food, and we have to take in air, which has oxygen, and we all know what happens when things are exposed to oxygen, right? They get oxidized. Like if you leave metals exposed, they're going to rust. If you cut an avocado and you leave it on the counter, it's going to turn brown. That's oxidation. So it's rusting inside the cells. And the toxic byproduct, just like in your car, is carbon monoxide. Inside your cells, they're free radicals. And those are very unstable particles that just damage everything, including the DNA. So those are the, let's say, the classic toxins that we can't escape, because we would have to stop eating and breathing to not make them, which is impossible. Then we have what we think of, let's say, inside our home and outside our homes. Because what has happened lately is that apparently inside our homes has become even more toxic than outside our homes. We used to think of, at least when I was in school, we talked about smog and we talked about air pollution and water pollution. So we have this notion that these toxins are coming from outside. But what has happened inside our homes is that everything that you use to clean, the upholstery, the rugs, the paint on the walls, all of those things are emitting these chemicals. And our animals now spend a lot more time indoors than outdoors. I mean, cats rarely even, domestic cats that are pets, they rarely even come out. They're not allowed outside. So even if you take your dog to the dog park, what happens is that you're probably, if you live in a big city, you're walking through traffic, or you put your dog in the car and your car also has, the upholstery. So it's like this never ending constant barrage of these chemicals that we're being exposed. So anything that is flame retardant, the stain resistant, the dogs are laying on the furniture all the time. The worst enemy is all those plugins, the air fresheners that people spray. Those are so bad. The dogs can't escape it. I mean, you put a plug in and your dog is in your living room and he's breathing that 24/7. Some of the scented candles are also toxic. So all of that is just contributing to a huge load. And then outside, of course, the air, if you live in a city, it's going to be worse. The water is contaminated. And then one of the most pervasive substances that we have now is glyphosate. And glyphosate supposedly was designed so that these GMO crops could be sprayed with the glyphosate, and then the weeds would not grow and the plants would thrive. And then initially the company said, oh, it's just affecting the plant material. Well, it turned out not to be true. And it affects, oh, I lost Heather.
Yeah, my video keeps going funny.
Going back and forth, that's okay. So what happens is that this glyphosate, it's being sprayed on the crops. Then they're also spraying it when they harvest it, because the machinery works better when all the crops are dried, like let's say the same amount. So it's just like a convenience thing that they're doing that. And what happens is that glyphosate is water soluble. So when it rains on those crops, it's going to be washed into the rivers, into the lakes, into the oceans. Then that water evaporates, right? And it goes into the regular cycle of water around the earth. So you could live in a place that is not sprayed, but if you're getting the air or the water, it rains on you, you could have your beautiful organic garden that you take so much pride into not putting anything, pesticide, herbicides on it. And guess what? You're getting it through the contamination of the rain, or your well water can be contaminated because it goes into the aquifer. So I forgot, but you can Google like how much glyphosate has been sprayed, and it's like billions of tons of this. And the World Health Organization has labeled it a probable carcinogen. And of course, what is going to happen? Like the company that manufacture and use these products and sell these products, they're not going to make any kind of investment into doing studies to prove that this is toxic. So it takes a lot of money to run these tests, but they are there's a big movement to people that think that there are linked to neurodegenerative diseases and infertility and cancer and so many organ malfunction. Excuse me. So it is very, very pervasive. So the other thing that happens with glyphosate is that it kills the good bacteria in the gut. So I'm sure you're aware of that, leaky gut syndrome. And when it first came out, what they said is that it would only affect plant material, but it turns out that it also kills bacteria and fungi because it interferes with a pathway that helps plants make some amino acids. So that's why they die. So they think there's a connection between the amount of glyphosate that is being sprayed and something called leaky gut syndrome that some of you may be aware about. Leaky gut syndrome is nothing more than when a lot of the good bacteria in your gut die, you end up with like holes, literally, because the lining of the gut is just one cell thick. So those holes or pores allow things that should not go into the bloodstream to come in. And the body sees it as being attacked by invaders. So it mounts a very aggressive immune response. When that is left unchecked for days and weeks and months and years, that can turn into an autoimmune condition, which is your own body attacking itself, because the immune system is supposed to just attack the invaders and that's it. Now it starts attacking your own body. So allergies, it starts at allergies, and then if it gets unchecked, it could become into more severe autoimmune. So what is happening is that all these toxins are being accumulated down the food chain. So if we're eating animals and fish that they themselves are eating plants and grain that has been sprayed with glyphosate, it is being concentrated down the food chain. Now, something that's really interesting is that these toxins get accumulated in our fat cells. So that leads on into, how are these things getting into our body? So they're getting in, we're obviously through our lungs, because in the air that we breathe, through our skin, anything we put on our skin. And we already discussed a little bit for our poor dogs that are, walking on all this and laying on the carpet and the furniture that is loaded with chemicals. Also, we're ingesting it right in the food. So this is where I'm sure Heather agrees with me. The big issue also with dogs that are being fed just kibble, because they are getting food that is basically a lot of carbs, and the little amount of protein is also coming, it's all contaminated with this GMO, and they are lacking in the things that we're traditionally told to eat, like leafy green vegetables and fruit and fresh ingredients, to be able to combat those toxins. Okay, excuse me a minute. Okay, so what was our next question? Something interesting that I also found out was that we tend to think that by sweating we can eliminate some of the toxins, and it's true for the toxins that our body makes, from breathing and eating. But all these environmental toxins, they have done studies where they measure how much is found on sweat, and very, very little. So we put out very little of these chemical toxins through our sweat. So even if you go to the sauna, even if you exercise a lot, even if you go for a jog and you have a good sweat, that is not going to be a major contributor in you being able to detox from these toxins.
How does a body detox if it's not coming out in things like sweat?
Okay, so that's something very interesting. Well, obviously, whatever we can do to stop bringing in toxins into our environment, that's the key. So of course, what the animals that I eat, or what is sprayed, or what is in my water that comes from the city and all of that, that's out of my control. But whatever you can do now knowingly to minimize that exposure is going to probably be one of the most important things that you can do. One of my goals this year is to invest in a good water filtration system for my house, or for my kitchen at least. You have to become a detective, like literally reading labels and going and finding out what these things are, what things are doing. So anything that you put in your body, anything you put in your dog's body, so all the shampoos, the topicals that we need to use to control some of the pests. Like I live in Florida, summer here, like July, August, this is like a steam bath, and the bugs love it. So as much as I try to do everything natural, it comes to a point where some months of the year I have to use these horrible things, but then I ramp up my detoxing protocols with my dogs. So some things we can't avoid, like if the dogs need to be dewormed, if they need to be vaccinated, all of those are added things. So first of all, get rid of all the plugins, all the sprays, all the air fresheners. Those are one of the first things that you have control of that can come out. And then for your furniture and where your dog lays, if you can buy some organic sheets and then you can put those over where they lay. It's just about not feeling like overwhelmed, but just rationally think, okay, what are the little steps that I can take? Sometimes cleaning, with things as simple as, water and vinegar, or there's a very, very, we're lucky in the sense that at least here in the United States, I don't know in Europe, but there's so many supposedly green organic products that are now available. But a word of caution there, don't blindly trust. A couple of years ago, we were going to spend a week at the beach, and I wanted to find a sunblock that was not toxic. So I go into the store, and of course there's like millions of them. And here in the US, we have an app that's called Think Dirty app. It has a funny name, but it rates the products from, so 0 to 3 is good, 4, 5, and 6 is and then 7, 8, and 9 is don't even touch it with a 6-foot pole. And they're rated and contamination to the environment if they're tested on animals, and then also on toxicity. So it has no perfumes, no parabens, none of that, all those stuff that is we know is bad. And it has like a little, you scan the barcode and it gives you the rating. So it's really, really handy. I spent like an hour like scanning, and the best I could find, I think, was a 3. And when I was looking at the label, it said, all natural, blah, 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 these pretty containers with the little leaves and flowers. And, I was like ready to go like, yeah, this is it. And then when I scanned it, oh, it's a 5. So you cannot, sadly, you cannot believe face value what all this advertising is saying. You really have to go in and look. So fragrances are really bad. Phthalates and parabens are really, really bad. Those are the top 3. So for women, cosmetics, I was reading an article that said that a woman throughout the day might use as much as 150 bad things that go in our body just because of, our lotions and the skincare and the makeup and the shampoo and what we use to bathe and all of that. So we have to become little detectives and just, find out. And the products are out there, and they might be, some of them are a little bit more expensive, but I think in the long run, if you're thinking about your health and your animal's health, you're going to spend 10 times more going to the vet. So,
exactly.
So water is interesting because I was one that always told people, like, you need to drink a lot of water to detox. And now I realize that is not really correct. We need water because our body is like 60-70% water, but the main detox organs in your body, which are the liver and the kidneys, are like 85% water. So water, clean water, is important to support those organs. But like I said before, these toxins, these chemical organic toxins, are not water soluble. So they're not coming out of the water if you drink a lot of water. Heavy metals, that's the other big issue with glyphosate, is that it acts as a smuggler of heavy metals into the body. And if you compound that with the leaky gut, where these heavy metals are now free to run into the bloodstream, they can go into the brain and create tons and tons and tons of damage. Okay. So detoxing, go ahead.
So on the course that I've just finished, it was a 2-year canine nutrition course. And my final research project was on how food or diet can affect behavior. But one of the things we touched on in the course, which I want to research more on, was enzymes. So could you shed a little light on enzymes for us, please, Liliane?
Yes. Enzymes are fascinating. So enzymes are really proteins. And what they do is they make every reaction that has to happen in the body more efficient. So think about this. Humans, of course, I don't have the value for dogs, but in humans, we have about 1,300 different enzymes. And they combine with coenzymes, which are other, products, and they create 100,000 different products, substances, however you want to call them, molecules, proteins that are needed for our cells to function. That is how important they are. So what the enzymes do, they're super interesting, is they actually help the cell save energy. For everything that needs to happen in the cell, we need energy. And that's another great topic, Heather, is the mitochondria. I'm fascinated by the mitochondria. The mitochondria are the organs in the cell, I know, that make the energy. So it's like if you go to the store and you don't have cash or credit card or check, you can't buy anything, right? Well, in our bodies, if we don't have the ATP that's made in the mitochondria, your body cannot function. It cannot make anything. Nothing can heal in the body. Nothing works properly. So what the enzymes do is they try to save some of that ATP, because we would need like a power plant to run our body. That's how much energy, our brain and all our organs need. So to give you a silly example that I read and I love it, says it's like if you go to the amusement park and a ride costs 10 pounds to ride, well, with the enzyme, it would just cost you like a fraction, like maybe like 1 pound. So it's saving the body a lot of money, and they recycle themselves so they don't get spent. So it's like if you had endless money, like you go to the store with the same money and buy So,
Wouldn't that be good?
yeah, so they're fascinating. But one of the things that happens is that they are very, very they're greatly affected with heat. They're very heat sensitive. So when we cook food, we're killing those precious enzymes. So if you eat an apple, that apple contains the enzymes needed to digest that apple. But once I cook it, they're done. And now your body has to try to make them, and that costs energy, right?
Mm.
So you might have heard of people that are, oh, I can't drink milk, I'm lactose intolerant. That's because they lack lactase to metabolize that. So that's how important they are. They can really, if our enzymes are not, we're not making them properly, it can impair the function. And the sad thing is, as we age, we make less. So there are three very, very important enzymes that are the ones that are in charge of detoxing the liver. And I can say the names, they're fancy names, you don't have to memorize them, but it's SOD, catalase, and glutathione. And the way they work is the detox process in the liver has two phases. So the first phase is like all the toxins come in the liver, and phase one, enzymes break it down and they turn them into free radicals. And then phase two gets rid of all those free radicals. So we have different enzymes that, let's say, eat free radicals, and they get rid of them and they can be excreted in the bile and through the urine. What happens is if those two phases are out of sync, and this phase one is working and phase two is not, now phase one has created a bunch of free radicals that if they don't get out of the body quickly, it can really cause a lot of issues. So those two things is a very, very well oiled process. And there's lots of little steps and lots of substances and proteins and coenzymes that are needed for all those enzymes to be able to form, to be able to move that quickly. So one of the things that happens, you might have heard of fatty liver that's non-alcoholic, so it's not created because of alcohol consumption. But what happens is that the body, very wisely, all those toxins are stored in fat. So the liver stores supposedly good fats for use. But what happens is that if the body is, again, toxic load, if our toxic load is so high, the liver says, oh, let's just stuff them in, the fat cells so they can't damage the body. And actually, it's interesting to notice that one of the things that could be a sign that you need to detox is weight gain. And how much do you see that in dogs, right? That are improperly fed. So yeah. So our enzyme production declines. So when we are like in our 40s, we're making like 30% less. When we're 65, we're making 50% less. And then I can put it in the chat, but the University of California, Davis, did a very interesting study where they mapped the dog genome and the human genome, and they compared some aging markers. And it turns out that by 1 year, our dogs are the equivalent of a 30-year-old person.
Wow.
And 4 years, they're equivalent of like a 50-year-old person. So I used to think like, oh, my dogs are seniors when they're like 8 or 9. Well, now I see the importance of, if that decline in the production of enzyme is starting when they're 3, which for us, we tend to think like, oh, it's just barely leaving puppyhood, right? Because of the way they act. But physiologically, from the enzyme production standpoint, they're much older, and that enzyme production is starting to deep, very, very.
That's really scary, isn't it? That our dogs actually are aging. We used to think, oh, it's 1 of our years to 7 of theirs, but actually it isn't the case anymore, not after the most recent research.
Yeah.
So if our body makes enzymes, then why do we need to detox? Why does a body of cane, doggy or human, why does it need to detox, and how?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question, and especially the how, because what I was preparing for this is, there's so many liver cleanses and liver detoxes and all those things, but they're all kind of geared about trying to, get the body to flush things, but it's a process a lot more complicated than that. So one of the things I got about this is that we're probably much better off supporting the detoxing organs. So that's something that I'm sure you have a lot more expertise with your course is, what are the foods that we can, eat and feed. And of course, those poor animals that are fed kibble their whole lives have like zero access to. So imagine, it's like a triple, double, quadruple whammy for them. But if you are feeding your dogs raw or preparing your own dog's food, remember cooking is not ideal because now we're killing the enzymes. So you probably know of a lot of foods that might be something interesting to put together, right? Like a little, like these are the what supports.
There's quite a few interesting things that have come up during the course, and there's quite a few different leaflets I want to put together. And interestingly, the Beyond the Breed newsletter is almost ready to press the button on. That will be going out back end of next week. So what I'm going to be doing is those who are signed up for the newsletter, they'll be getting this kind of information first before it goes into the group. But I can see ultimately that all these leaflets will lead to another book, which will then encompass how diet can affect behavior, can affect the different functional characters. Because ultimately, kibble-fed dogs, in the research that I've done over 2 years, I've been feeding raw for 15 years, but certainly since I've been studying for this course, the kibble-fed dogs are not only nutritionally hungry their entire lives, but they're also dehydrated their entire lives because there just is not enough moisture in kibble. And even though they drink gallons from, fresh water dish at the side of their kibble bowl, it isn't as bioavailable as the moisture contained in fresh raw meat.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important that dogs are fed a species appropriate diet. But the enzymes thing is really interesting.
It's very, very interesting. So things like adding, bone broth and some of the veggies, I guess, like cucumbers and celery. Of course, all the cruciferous veggies, all the leafy greens, all of that are great support. The issue that we're talking, and that's going to be a good lead into, other mechanisms that we have that can elevate those enzymes within the body. Maybe this could be a good part too. But the issue we have is of quantity, right? We cannot eat enough good food, the best nutritious food, the organic food. I mean, we would have to eat literally like 3 or 4 truckloads of cruciferous veggies. Like I like broccoli, but I don't think I want to eat a truckload of broccoli or blueberries. I think I would have to spend the whole day in the bathroom. So because of that, it goes back to what we talked at the beginning. The toxic load is so humongous. The traditional way that our bodies did 100 years ago, or our dogs and cats did 150 years ago, which was you eat species appropriate food, and then your body can make enough enzymes and enough detoxing enzymes that are way more efficient. So to give you an idea, the 3 enzymes that I mentioned, SOD, glutathione, and catalase, one molecule of SOD, just one molecule of SOD can neutralize 1 million free radicals per second. That's
incredible.
Incredible. And the enzyme recycles itself, so it's not like one and done. A handful of blueberries will neutralize about 2,600 free radicals. So again, we're talking amounts. It's like our bodies are literally like houses on fire, and we're trying to eat good food, and it's like throwing a Dixie cup of water, as far as we can go, fill it up, and throw another Dixie cup of water, and throw it up, another Dixie cup of water. What is that going to do on your whole house on fire? So when you can activate these enzymes, it's like you have a fire truck in every room, and in the minute, the little spark goes up, it's like, it's putting it off. You can now really make a dent. So that is why, to be respectful of people's time, we can do, I think in 2 weeks, we're doing this again, and hopefully we can get it live stream one more time.
We'll be more experienced then.
We will not give up until we can do this. But hopefully people can get some from the recording. But there are ways. But, by all means, it's not permission to, go eat donuts and ice cream, as good as they are. But yes, the more good food, the more fresh, and like Heather said, you can drink water even if it's pure water, but if you eat a plate full of veggies, that the properties of the water is not equivalent, and the body can, and that's again that bioavailability. So it's the two things, is the amount of toxins and the fact that as we age they get decreased, and the stress of how we live is actually aging us quicker. So,
Yeah.
stress affects everything in the body. So
Yeah.
it's that combination, it snowballs into, and so some of the signs that your body needs to detox, I have a list here. So of course, and this is both humans and dogs, but one of the things I do want to point out is that some of these signs could be very subtle, because if my dog throws up once, or if he has, a little bit of loose stools, or he looks a little bloated, I'm not going to run to the vet, for that one event. So maybe it's happening, once a month. So there's these little things that are happening, but they're not acute enough for me to say, oh, I got to do something about it. And then when we go do something about it, that's when I think that's most of the decline in dogs. I see it in all my students is, you take your dog to the vet and, oh, his kidneys are and his liver values are right. So what is that? That's all the toxins, right?
Yeah.
And now we're going to run all these panels and put them on all these drugs that are going to add to the toxic load, and
Yeah.
we're really not addressing the root cause. So that is why it's so important, and that, good nutrition. My puppies are already eating raw.
Yay.
So gastrointestinal offsets, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, skin issues, so rashes, hot spots, ear infections, because the skin is another big detox organ, but it's meant to really detox like the natural organic toxins that our body makes, not those other yucky things. That has to be done by the liver. So if you have a dog that has recurrent infections, that's just a sign of low immunity. That's a sign that the gut is not working, right? So support the gut. Weight gain in humans, puffiness, inflammation. In humans, rosacea, any kind of, dermatitis, kind of itchy things. All of that is related to toxins. And then, like you well mentioned, I want to end with that because that is something that I'm truly obsessed about. Is I really think there's a connection between aggressive behavior in dogs and those livers just being absolutely overwhelmed with toxins. And in Chinese medicine, they link aggression to the liver, to liver malfunctioning. So there we go. That's another
That's another avenue to look at as
to
well.
look at. Yeah. And
Really
I have
interesting.
personally, for people that, trust us enough, because as dog trainers, we're not vets, but I have dealt with some aggressive issues where if I could get the owners to really understand about the importance of cleaning the environment, cleaning the diet, and we have had, it's not that it's going to magically go away, because of course there's lots of other things that are involved, but I have seen, especially with anxiety, anxiety in dogs that are very stressed and nervous, when you clean up the environment and their diet, the changes are really, really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Even as before I did this food course, over the last 20, certainly the last 20 years, when I've suggested a change of diet to dogs that are, I remember one that it was a border collie had bitten a delivery driver, and was acting all sorts of weird behaviors indoors. And the lady changed the diet, and she noticed a huge difference in the dog within 48 hours. She said it was amazing. But Turid Rugas, the Norwegian dog trainer, she had a lady go to her with a German Shepherd. And I think Dr. Connor Brady was talking about this a while back.
Yeah.
And Turid said to the owner, just feed it, species appropriate food and bring the dog back tomorrow. And the dog came the next day, and she said, I couldn't believe the change in the dog, and that was just overnight.
Yeah.
So it really, I've seen huge changes in dogs, in their demeanor, in their, posture, the way they just, you can tell they're more relaxed when they're fed species appropriate food. So it's something that's really close to my heart. But I think if we do another session in a couple of weeks, and then, you know, take the whole thing on, and maybe get folk to put some questions into the group.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
And, you know, and then we can do maybe a session just on a bit of information, and also answering any questions that people have got, either on toxins or diets or, you know, behavior, that kind of thing. And I don't want it to turn into an enormous behavior consultation, but you know, but people can't get often behavior and food answers from veterinary professionals, because those are the two subjects that they don't study. And vets have told me that, you know, they spend 2 hours on dog behavior in 6 years and 2 hours on canine nutrition. That's over and above what they are told, obviously, from the kibble manufacturers.
Oh yeah, it's
Is it the same in the States?
Yeah. Well, and you know, there's a big shift now, which has me a little worried, because there is a massive, there's one company that, and again, you know, kibble, this is here, but so it's called, oh, what is it called? The name escapes me, but it gets delivered. It's pasteurized. So again, it's a step above, but you actually see it's like chicken, and you see the veggies and you see the carrots, but it's very limited. You see they have 3 different proteins, and it comes packaged, and of course they put the name of your dog, and it's very cute. But what I like about the advertising is they're focusing it on how much weight the dogs have lost by coming on this diet. So they interview the people. They say, oh, you know, she didn't want to go for walks, and she just laid there, and she's lost like 20 pounds, and look at her now, she can run and chase the ball, and da da da. So I go like, yes, at least from that point, and they're focusing on that. And then now there's another company that actually I see it in the supermarket. It's also pasteurized raw. So at least it's a step. So, but the thing that I don't think it's a perfect food, and I don't think, because there's no bone, there's very little organ meat, you know, it's lacking in a lot of things. And I think it's also lacking in variety, because it's pretty much, you know, the same veggies, and just rotate the 3 proteins. And half of the dogs here in the United States, the vets tell them that they're allergic to chicken, so they're stuck with, you know, beef and turkey. And of course they want to do all the exotic, you know, $150 bags of ostrich and I don't know what, which is totally silly. But I think there's this move because when people see the advertising, you know, 20 times in a day, I think it now gets let's say the less informed pet owner that still loves their dog deeply, and they want the best, and they don't want it to, you know, die of all these horrible diseases, thinking like, oh, so there is something other than kibble. So I'm happy for that, but it's still lacking in a lot of things. But it's a step in the right direction.
Yes, I agree. Yeah,
with someone with a lot of money that can, you know, put a lot of advertising into their food.
Interestingly enough, when I was doing the research or some of the research for this course, I came across some information on how much tryptophan is in various meats. And of course, tryptophan being the precursor to serotonin, I'm like, oh, this is another rabbit hole I need to disappear down for a while. So I'd put together a leaflet on various meats and the quantities of tryptophan in all these different meats. So that's something else that I will be revealing at some point as well, because I thought that was really interesting, because for our alerter observer functional character, if they're fed a raw diet with protein that is high in tryptophan, maybe it's a research thing we could do, you know, just like I don't know, you know, not a scientific thing, but maybe we could have, you know, get a dozen observer alerters and, you know, feed 6 of them on, you know, beef, turkey, duck, pork, whatever, and feed 6 on one of the meats that's high in tryptophan for an extended period, I don't know, 3-4 months, I don't know how scientific.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be, it would be a really interesting, even if it doesn't really come up with anything, I think, that would be really good. But in this country, scientific research on dogs is so highly regulated. So we'd have to kind of do it as, maybe a bit of fun. I don't know. I'd obviously need to speak to people in the know as to how, how legitimately I could do that without getting into trouble, legal trouble. But it would be an interesting research thing to do.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, yep. And
cool. Well, why don't we regroup in 2 weeks?
okay.
And I'll put a post into the group maybe early next week or over the weekend and say, if folk have got questions,
Yes.
we'll cover those in a couple of weeks.
And then we can delve a little bit more into maybe have a list of foods that are highly advisable, and then how we can activate the enzymes within our body, so they have that tool as well. And then at some point we need to hop into the mitochondria.
Yes, I definitely want to cover a bit on mitochondria, because that is such an interesting subject.
Yeah.
And I've got the thing I was talking to you about before we went live, that's under the desk. That's been activated as soon as it came in the door, so we can talk more about that in 2 weeks, because I don't want to give away the secret, but because that's going to be the first thing in the newsletter.
Good. Well, lovely. So let me know. We'll be in touch, and I'm excited to do these. It's just I could talk till the cows come home, as you can see. That's a very, I don't know, that's an American saying.
I'm just saying, when I get talking about dogs,
I don't even know what that means. It's like, do the cows never want to come home? Like, I don't know.
Don't get me talking about dogs, because I don't know when to shut up.
Okay. Well, lovely seeing you. Thank you.
Yes, you too.
I'll work on these recordings as soon as I can and try to put them both together, see what comes out.
Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for coming. Thanks everyone on Facebook for watching, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.